Blizzard Entertainment presents The Doom of Karesh by Adam Christopher, prequel to World of Warcraft: The War Within, narrated by Ray Porter. Chapter 2, The Devouring War. The void roiled in the skies above Telgress Rift as Locust Walker led Alleria Windrunner on their chase. She was wearied by the journey, having lost track of how long they'd been on the move. Their hunt had been far from easy. Telgress Rift was swarming with creatures of the void, drawn to this place by the power of the Harbinger. They had managed to evade many beings, but had no choice in confronting others that stood in their path. True enough, they had all, so far at least, been dispatched with ease, but Alleria could not deny how her mind lingered less on the battle and more on the picture of Karesh that Locust Walker had painted for her. They followed a trail that was invisible to the eye, though not to the senses. At first, Alleria merely followed and listened, but as they neared their quarry, she began to feel it, the way the void seemed to bend around their target, as though a huge boulder had been thrown into a mighty river. The energies of the void parted around it, the current disturbed, the wake turbulent, unstable. That sensation had grown ever stronger, and they stopped, hidden behind a shard of rock that rose like a blade from the barren ground of the rift. The rim of the shard was haloed with a bright violet light, betraying the presence of the void revenant ahead of them.
"Remember,"
said Locust Walker,
"this creature is far more dangerous than those we have so far encountered. Its heart belongs to me, but it will take the both of us to overcome. Do not underestimate its strength."
Alleria tightened her grip on her bow.
"And do not underestimate mine."
The Locust Walker turned his inscrutable face to hers.
"You seek the power to destroy your enemy, but Xal'atath will wield even your own power against you. You must first find balance."
Alleria's face fell. Locust Walker had promised much would be gleaned from this journey, but right now, she couldn't see any moral or lesson from his potted history of a lost world. What struck her far more was that the powerful being before her, who claimed it best she let go of her every attachment, had once been fallible, emotional, had once loved and fretted and feared as she now did.
"What became of the Kareshi, of Chryson?"
Alleria asked, knowing it would needle him.
"Is she like you now? Or did she fall along with your world?"
Her mentor did not answer. Alleria frowned and was about to ask again when the violet glow ahead flared brightly and vanished. Locust Walker stepped out from behind the stone, Alleria at his side, bow raised. The plain was empty. Of the void revenant, there was no sign. Alleria lowered her weapon.
"Are we sure that was the one?"
"It was. Did you not feel it?"
Alleria nodded.
"Perhaps it could feel us."
Locust Walker drifted a slow circle, scanning the landscape around them. Alleria did the same, her bow at the ready. Then she saw it, far away, amidst scattered boulders, a flash of violet, and in her mind, another pull, another tug of the void. She opened her mouth to shout, but Locust Walker flew past her. Alleria followed at a run.
"Beware, Locust Walker. The all-devouring comes."
Those words haunted me, along with that terrible day when the sky had pitched into a purple-tinged night without stars, a night that many feared would prove unending. And yet, this was not the day of Karesh's demise. Yes, there was unease. The markets remained closed, not just in Menusa, but in every city-state. People locked themselves indoors, fearful of the violet-purple glow that had cast the world into grim, unnatural shadow. Salhadar convened the Council of Oracles, and many plans were discussed and debated as rumors grew, not just that the sky heralded the end of all things, but that the oracles were in hiding. Unrest churned among those who had seen the radiant visions and knew that action should have been taken long ago. But it all came to naught. There was disbelief at first, morphing to relief, joy even, as the oracles emerged and put forward a plan to banish the long and evil night. This plan was not rooted in technomancy, but in a turn to the ancient ways, which brought comfort to the minds who wished to find it. The people celebrated, and then, with a resilience worthy of admiration as well as surprise, returned to their daily lives. Either the Kareshi were stronger than I had hoped, or their memories were shorter than I'd expected. Perhaps it was a little of both. But I understood my new oath, the new work of my life. My resolve had never been stronger. I had a world to save, and time was running out. Although our departure had been delayed by the encroaching void, I accepted Chryson's suggestion, and we made a new home in Tazavesh. And while Menusa would forever be my city, the months that followed among the bustling markets of Tazavesh were happy ones, and it was to Chryson I owed this joy. Salhadar had elected to stay in the city, as did the Soul Scribe. This meant the spell dancers, too, had found a fixed abode, the first in many a season. At first, Chryson bristled against this. She and her brothers and her sisters were nomads. A life on the road was their oath. To stay in one place was to build a prison for themselves, trapping the very spirits they danced to free. But while Tazavesh was the true home for neither of us, it was here we found other advantages. We could walk the markets and traffic with the citizenry, and there were no eyes to watch us, no eavesdroppers to whisper. Tazavesh was freer in many ways, it seemed, and its people discarded the norms that had once labeled our relationship taboo. With the rabble, the work was as difficult as it was important. True to their word, the rabble were eager to aid my research, but relocating my laboratory wholesale from Menusa was a bridge too far. The High Priest instead gave me a license to use what Tazavesh was most famous for, its market. The market sprawled as wide as Menusa itself, a town within a town, so large it had its own districts and precincts. The tables and stalls piled with every kind of ware from every corner of Karesh. In truth, while I had been here before, it still made my head spin with both its size and its beauty. The towering spires, the colored suncloths that stretched between them, spanning impossible lengths, the rich smoke that rose between stalls, carrying the smells of 100 cuisines from a dozen lands. Distracted as I was by the importance of my work and the doom I had to prevent, I came to rely on Chryson's help in gathering what I required, for she was well-traveled and far more at ease dealing with traders and craftsmen than I, able to strike bargains with merchants to whom I could barely offer the simplest of greetings. The work progressed, and Chryson was by my side. And yet, there was something very wrong.
Beware Locust Walker, the all-devouring is coming.
The voice remained. Over the weeks and months I had grown used to the radiant visions, had largely been able to put them from my mind as I focused on my work. Of void whispers there were many. Indeed, from the very moment I first turned my visor scopes upon the void, I heard the creatures there speak, but this voice was that other thing, the one from before, the one that was different, the one that had planted a seed of fear within me, the one that I knew had sought me out. And as it came again now in the marketplace, I froze.
Locust Walker, beware.
I stopped, standing before a splendid stall of spun glass from Tingarla, one of the farthest city-states from Tazavesh. The goods commanded a high price indeed, the merchant careful to vet those she thought could afford it, even as they approached her table.
Locust Walker, beware. The all-devouring is coming. He is near. He is the end. He is Demensius. He is a lord of the void, and he hungers.
It was Chryson who broke the spell. I recovered my senses and found her apologizing to the merchant, who stared with wary eyes at this nuisance blocking her stall. Chryson pulled me away in a silent daze back to our quarters, and it was there she waited patiently for an answer while I recovered my senses. I told her, and she listened, and when my tale was done she considered what I had said with care, her questions and observations astute. This was the first time I had spoken of the voice, and she the first person to know of it.
It must be related to the radiant visions,
she said.
Perhaps your close work investigating the void opened your mind to something else.
I had no answers, of course, and she had little to say that could comfort me. Conversation then turned to her own news. The spelldancers were taking to the road once more. Chryson told me she could stay if I wished, but even as she made her offer, I knew what my answer would be. She had her own oath to fulfill, as did I. I promised her I would not allow the fear in my mind to interfere with my work. I lost many weeks alone. Yes, I worked, and worked hard, but at such a cost, foregoing rest and sustenance and any distraction, as the voice in my mind pushed aside this happy freedom I'd found with Chryson, replacing it with a fear. And yes, it was fear, despite the promise made to my love of the mounting danger facing Karesh. My instruments told me void energies were accumulating around our world at a truly alarming rate. One day, and soon, these void energies would do more than strike terror into the Kareshi. They would tear our world apart, laying bare the world soul itself, and our fear only spiced these void energies as one would prepare ingredients for a meal.
Beware the all-devouring.
But my toils had not been for nothing. In my weeks of research I had found an answer indeed. It had been there from the start, but only now had I begun to see it. I could devise a means of protecting Karesh and its people. I could save my world, but I could not do it alone. I needed the ravel and the full extent of the world's resources to pull off this feat. I met with them regularly to keep them abreast of my progress, but as time passed I saw how they looked at me, and perhaps I could not blame them. I was exhausted, but possessed of a feverish intensity even I could recognize as unnerving. The data was complex, decipherable only to myself, a poor salesman on my best day, and the work was not yet complete. Perhaps that was my greatest failing, that I did not give them the solution from the start. But I wanted to be sure, so I waited. And that wait cost me. And all the while, the voice. What was once a simple warning was now a strange poetry that pulled at my every thought.
Locust Walker, beware. The all-devouring is coming.
After a long stretch of sleeping in my laboratory, barely emerging for meals, I returned home to find Chryson waiting for me. Seeing her was a glorious balm for my troubled mind. She embraced me and held me, and all I could do was stand there and weep. When I was finished, empty, she pulled away. I moved to kiss her, and she pushed me back with a laugh. She prepared a bath, which was long and hot and wonderful, and I did nothing but succumb to her attentions as she scrubbed and washed the lost weeks away. Then she drained and drew the bath afresh to join me in it, and for a time I forgot about the void and the ravel. Chryson even managed to drown out the voice in my mind. I felt complete, whole. For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself. Wrapped in linens, we sat in the warm evening air and drank wine, and she told me of the places she'd been and the dances she'd danced, why she loved Karesh, even under the dark, void-touched skies, and why she loved life, and why she loved me. Reunited and restored to my former self, I felt emboldened, certain of my work and my data, certain that the solution I had found was the right one. Tomorrow they will listen, I told myself. They will have no choice. Chryson saw my mind wandering, of course. "You must tell me what weighs on you," she breathed, a whisper of love and warmth, not of cold, echoing darkness. I took a breath, and Chryson squeezed my hand. "Time is short," I said, "and I know the name of the threat looming over us." Chryson cocked her head, concern evident upon her features, but she did not interrupt. "It is called Demensius," I said. "It is a Void Lord, and it is trying to pry apart Karesh. That is why the World Soul cried out to us in the radiant visions. When this being will finally crack open and consume the world, I do not know, but it is soon. That is what my data show. The world will be torn asunder, and the Kareshi will die in darkness and pain and terror." I saw the change in Chryson's features, a hint of that fear I knew so very well, now taking root inside her. I grasped her hand close to me. "But I can save Karesh." Her eyes were wide with wonder. "You can stop a Void Lord?" At this I shook my head. "No, and I believe nothing can. Demensius will pry the planet apart. It is an unstoppable force.
But you said...
I squeezed her hand. I said I can save Karesh, or most of it. The Kareshi will live. Whether the Void Lord will retreat from his meal, seek another target, I cannot know. I felt my love for Chryson grow in that moment. I watched a transformation in her. Her faith, her pride in me and my work and my oath, imparting a strength to her being as it did to my own. She even laughed softly.
What do the Ravel say?
I laughed myself then. I have yet to tell them. Chryson pulled herself away and stood, her expression stern.
Time runs out and you have yet to tell them.
I sighed. It is complicated, my love. We are a group divided. Some believe in me, but others call me Void Sorcerer, saying it was a mistake for me to join their company. I felt my shoulders slump. They are tired of problems and want for a solution, but they would smother such an answer in its cradle if I am ill-prepared. Chryson folded her arms tightly and began to stalk the room from balcony to bedchamber, her feet kicking at the carpets as a spell dancer kicks at sand. I watched in surprise, awaiting a judgment I knew I deserved.
If they want a solution, give it to them,
she said, not pausing in her strides.
If your calculations on the power of the Rishi ribbons are finished, then present them.
She stopped then and faced me, but this time her expression was warm.
You forget who you are. You are the Locust Walker. That is the oath you swore. That is your truth.
She walked to the balcony and opened her arms to the darkened city beyond.
We Kareshi are strong, all of us. But the World Soul? It called to you. You listened, you worked, and you have the answer. You have championed Karesh even as the greatest among its number, humiliated you, then turned to you in secret for help. You are the answer.
I did not know what to say. No being had ever made such wild declarations about me, had possessed such unshakable faith in my worth. Chryson took my hands, pulling me to my feet. She kissed me gently.
You can save the world, my love. That is your truth.
I stared into her eyes and she into mine. I shook in her grasp, barely able to keep myself upright, and yet Chryson stood firm and proud, her strength a wonder of the world. And she was right. Too long I had lingered, self-absorbed and full of doubt and fear, while the rabble waited also, their own doubts and fears multiplying by the day. Enough. Enough. I was Locust Walker, and I was ready. Let the void come, for Karesh would be ready also. On the way to the Ravel, with my final report, I found Nari and Kaiveza. Of the illustrious group, it was these two to whom I was closest, and I greeted them heartily in the market, only to see their open faces clouded with reluctance. I pulled back the hood of my cloak. The improvement in my form must have been obvious even to my companions, as both beheld me with some measure of surprise. Yet I saw a grimace pass across Kaiveza's face, and I felt suddenly nervous. I clutched tightly the bound findings I was due to present.
There is talk,
said Kaiveza, And then she stopped, her eyes falling to the dusty street. I knew this look, the same I saw at that last meeting of the oracles, so long ago now.
There are some among the rabble who wish to distance themselves,
Nari said,
from you and your work.
I searched Nari's face as though the answers to any questions I had were etched there.
Beware the all-devouring.
This I know, Nari, I said. But what has happened? Why the warning now?
Beware Demensius.
She paused, seeking the right words.
Your research is hard for the Council to understand. You also say that the approaching void energies will soon begin affecting the planet itself, but we have not seen it. We rely only on your data, your findings. There are some who whisper that the old ways have been working, that technomancy has nothing more to offer Karesh. And there are some who want you out.
Kaiveza finished.
They came to us last night, a delegation of those who wish to retract your oath. Those who think of you not as Locust Walker, but as Void Sorcerer. They will be waiting for you.
I shook my head, but Nari's urgent tone bore into me once more.
Listen, there is still time to right the course, but little of it. You have supporters. We are fortunate to count Salhadar among them, but even their patience begins to run dry. They need solutions.
I had learned to take Nari's counsel seriously, even more so than that of my old friend Kaiveza. As both a covert agent of the Oracles and a member of the Ravel, Nari saw and heard more than any other. People confided in her without even realizing it, and there was none with a better understanding of the current state of play than she.
Beware the all-devouring.
I have the solution, I said, and not without a little pride. Here, look, the work is done. I am ready. I began to sort my papers until Nari stilled my hand with her firm grip.
Beware Demensius.
You are certain?
Beware this Lord of the Void.
I nodded. It is why I called the meeting today.
He hungers.
I can save Karesh. Nari and Kaiveza exchanged a glance. If they spoke, I could not hear them, for I was listening to another voice entirely. At Chryson's urging, I had issued the summons later than usual, and to the Ravel's credit, they responded in kind. As I made my way to the guild hall with Nari and Kaiveza at my side, I thought of their warning. Perhaps the speed of the Ravel's reply was not due to an eagerness to hear my solution, but rather enthusiasm to witness my downfall. And, despite the detour of my conversation in the market square, we three arrived at the meeting place well before the remaining members of the secret society, as I had intended. Casting aside my customary traveler's cloak, I welcomed my peers one by one when they arrived, noting with some pleasure the shock on their faces at the sight of me, bathed and proper, attired in my finest technomancer robes of gold and purple, the coronet of a nobleman of Manusa sitting on my brow. At this, even Bilal, leader of Tazavesh himself, could not resist a smile, bowing low but with good humor before me, despite the difference in rank between us. Yes, there was a change in me, and all could see it. It was now on my shoulders to make that change worthwhile. I had spent the preceding months demonstrating the problem to minds that were increasingly closed to me. Now I would open them once more and show the solution. My plan is both a simple one, I began, and the most complex undertaking Karesh will ever see. I did not need the binding of parchment I had brought with me, for I could recite every detail of my scheme like a well-loved song. But I had brought something else to aid in my argument, and I took it out now. It seemed light as nothing, a mere strip of silver cloth, smooth, billowing with motion like a gentle river. But when I moved it in my hands, a light shone from deep within, casting arcane beams across the Guildhall, pale yet otherworldly, leaving none in doubt as to the nature of the power woven into the very fabric itself. The Rishi ribbons are something we all know, I said. They are held by most of Karesh's leaders, symbolic of our ties to the ancient ways. They form part of our history, a reminder of our past. But I say to you now, they are also the key to our future. We know the arcane lives within them, but it is I who have found the secret to calling upon that power. I held the strip up above my head. Through devices of my design, these sacred artifacts can transmute any kind of energy into pure arcane power. This power can be harnessed, funneled through the cores of great reactors, the plans of which I have also drawn. Bilal stepped forward. I lowered my hands, showing the Rishi ribbon to him, and he studied it, although at a pace removed, as if he were perhaps afraid to touch it himself. Finally, he looked upon me. Reactors? Indeed, I said. It is with these that we will power vast barriers of arcane magic. These barriers can be erected over every city-state across Karesh. Impenetrable, inviolable, they will shield us. At this, I turned my gaze upon the rest of the council. Make no mistake, the Void readies for its great strike. My research tells that this threat that darkens our skies arises from a Void Lord, Demensius. This terrible being will crack open our world when it feels the time is right, and we move quicker to that doom with each passing moment. That cannot be prevented. I held up the simple strip of cloth again. But he will find no matter to feed on. We, the Kareshi, will survive, safe beneath our barriers. The rabble sat in silent contemplation of my proposal. As Nari smiled in her alcove, Kaiveza too made known her approval. She stood from her seat and stalked through the assemblage to grasp my hand in hers. It will work, I said. I know it. Salhadar's expression was dark, but I could see he was deep in thought. The construction of the barriers is work that cannot be concealed, he said at last. It will require the labor of many. I nodded. Then it is time to tell the people. More than us few now see the radiant visions. It scares them, and the void grows strong upon this fear. You are the high priest. The people look to you and the oracles for answers. You must tell them everything, and soon, because if we are to protect Karesh, the magical barriers must be built quickly. Bilal sighed loudly. The planning alone will be substantial, and the only one of us who truly understands what we are to build is you. Bilal glanced at Salhadar.
To coordinate such a project,
Let Locust Walker lead.
The group turned as one to Nari as she stepped from her alcove and into the light.
The Ravel needs Locust Walker. That is why he joined us.
She circled the room, gazing upon each member.
We have no time to waste in argument, in debate. We need a leader, someone to direct our efforts and prepare our world for what is to come.
She stopped before me. Our eyes met, and she repeated her conclusion.
Let Locust Walker lead. If we follow his command, we can be prepared.
There were mutterings around the group. Eitri's guffaws were the loudest, but I ignored her. The others bore frowns, but others nodded, and soon more were in agreement. Like me, they accepted Nari's advisement with a noted weight. Still, Bilal scoffed.
ridiculous.
His eyes appraised me as though I were scrap from a junk stall.
A technomancer of Manusa cannot command the High Priest of the Untamed.
Salhadar winced as though in pain.
And yet, you cannot agree,
cried Eitris.
The oracles obey my command,
said Salhadar.
Perhaps.
It was one of the merchant captains, Gezer. He spoke rarely at our meetings, but always with caution and careful thought.
Perhaps if we study these plans Locust Walker brings with some care.
He turned to me.
If we could perhaps be better educated in your methods, the responsibility of these Rishi ribbons could be shared.
Kaiveza cut in.
We waste time. You have heard Locust Walker speak. The void comes for us and Demensius with it. We must act and act now.
She stepped up to Salhadar, so close he flinched back from her forceful approach.
Say it, High Priest. Give the word, and the work can begin.
Bilal laughed again.
The people of Manusa must be congratulated for their patience, Kaiveza, but here, your manner is less appreciated than you think.
Enough!
All attention was on the High Priest, his countenance stern. He looked to me, and so authority was conferred with but a simple command.
It is done already. The Ravel is led by the Locust Walker. As he commands, so we obey. My final instruction is that the work must begin at once.
Silence reigned, but then, one by one, the Ravel stood and joined my side. Soon only Bilal and Eitris remained stubbornly in place. But with my supporters behind me, High Priest included, I stepped forward and held out my hand. We do this for Karesh, I said. We do this for the Kareshi. This was enough, for Eitris nodded to herself and then took the hand that was offered. Perhaps her decision was enough to convince Bilal, for as the ruler of Tazavesh sat and stared for a good while longer, finally he joined us. The glare he unleashed upon me as he did so, I did not like. But I put it from my mind. There was much to do. To say that Karesh would never be the same again is to understate matters more than the mind can fathom. For the transformation of our world was both rapid and shocking. By order of the Council of Oracles, driven in secret by my leadership of the Ravel, all effort was made to build my proposed arcane reactors, the Kareshi taking new oaths to commit their paths to this great work. As the world labored, The voice from the void continued to speak. At first I tried to ignore it. Then I came to embrace it, for I knew I heard it for a reason. It was foolish to ignore the warnings it provided, which also served to strengthen my resolve. It was the voice that told me the time was coming, that Demensius was close, that soon the void would caress the shores of our worlds before the Void Lord swallowed us whole. In truth, there had been dissent among even the people, though perhaps that understates the feeling. Tazavesh and Manusa, Gestalt and Dervashna, and every city-state between was changed forever. The streets and canals, market squares and plazas became a maze of conduits and channels, pipelines and aqueducts that carried not water, but the throbbing, humming, arcane energy of the Rishi ribbons from one great reactor to the next. The entire system, a great web powering the barriers that defined our skies. But public mood was quick to change, because one day the void shook the foundations of our world. It was precisely as my calculations had shown, and just as the voice had promised. We had completed the job without a moment to spare. The arcane shield rose above, crackling to life and holding strong, whilst the dark power of the void crashed upon it like grains of sand in a dust storm. The barriers worked, and the Kareshi rejoiced, safe in their homes, in their beloved city-states. For the first time amidst the backdrop of the devouring war, it seemed Karesh could win. Little was I to know, the survival of my people would come at a terrible cost. And while I had saved the Kareshi from one doom, I had, in fact, condemned them to another fate entirely. The story continues in The Doom of Karesh, Chapter 3, Ethereum.